seriously popular.
Welcome to the Life of Bryony, a podcast where we explore the messier parts of life. We like to keep it real and absolutely shame-free around here. Now, this week it is OCD Awareness Week. An obsessive-compulsive disorder is an issue extremely close to my heart, although I kind of wish it wasn't, because I've suffered from it since I was about 11 years old. Today, I'm chatting with actor Kimberley Nixon about her experience with postnatal OCD and the realities of living and coping with intrusive thoughts.
This little voice started of, what if you're the danger? What if you keep seeing horrible things because you want those horrible things? I thought I'd gone mad. I thought I'd literally lost my mind.
Kimberley Nixon, coming up on The Life of Bryony. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I have a habit of running around London in only my bra and pants. It's a kind of thing of showing people that exercise is for everyone. I am a size 18 to 20. Exercise is really transformative for the way it makes me feel, and I do it for that rather than the way it makes me look. And I like to kind of show people how brilliant exercise is for your mental health as well as your physical health. And anyway, the other week I did a 10K, the Vitality 10K in London, in my underwear. And it was really funny because it didn't really attract that much attention. Like, I think, you know, in London, we're used to seeing some kind of really weird sights. Anyway, I did a reel for Instagram in the back of the Uber home. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not very good at making reels. So it was cobbled together in about 3 minutes, right? So this is not a professional outfit at all. But I put it up and sort of got on with my life. And it has gone very, very viral. Like, I have never made a reel that has had that many views. So I think at the last count, it was 2 million views. And if you've got like a blue tick on Instagram, it tells you some really like frightening details. So that it told me this morning that it had been watched for a total of 360 days, 6 hours, 47 minutes and 48 seconds. So this like 1 minute reel has basically been watched for the equivalent of a year, I think. If you hear creaking in the background, it's because my husband has decided that now is the right moment to clean the house. Wonderful. Anyway, so it went really viral, and weeks on, I am still opening up my Instagram and seeing comments on it. Now, I want to make clear that most of the comments, like 90% of the comments, are really supportive and lovely, because I don't want to put people off exercise and make people think that everyone's out there judging people, because they're just not. But I did want to kind of, I'm quite amazed at, I suppose this happens once things get watched a certain amount of times, is you start to attract the people that aren't your tribe. Like, they start to make comments. And oh my God, it's amazing to see how people, they have so much to say on unedited, unfiltered women's bodies. And there were the obvious comments from men that I'm not going to bother giving any more energy to, because life's too fucking short, right? But what I found more interesting was the comments, a lot of them from women actually, which were like, they were giving me what they thought was very kind advice about things like chafing, you know, like, oh, that looks like it might chafe. And I was like, I've got that under control. By the way, for everyone who asks, Body Glide or Mega Babe, they're brilliant, right? But then there were lots of people that were like, ooh, love, you need to get a more supportive sports bra. Like, I'm like, are you my boobs? Are you my boobs? Because I am like, let's not beat around the bush here. So my boobs are like a 36, 38 double J. So they're reasonably fucking humongous, right? And I'm just going to give you, so I pulled out one comment, which was kind of indicative of quite a lot of the comments. And it was, love your confidence and your attitude. But, and I hate that there's a but, please get a more supportive sports bra. Kiss, kiss. Now, there doesn't have to be a but. You could just say, love your confidence and your attitude, full stop, and leave the sports bra thing in your head. But then I looked at these comments and I thought, God, this is why I do what I do. Because we are so unused to seeing unfiltered, unedited women's bodies that we don't actually know what they look like in the wild. Like, Here's the thing. If you have boobs over a certain size that have not been surgically enhanced, by which I mean they're just naturally that big, they will move when the rest of your body moves, okay? And that's just physics, right? And unless I bind my boobs down with like several rolls of masking tape, they're going to move. And by the way, you may think, well, then bind them down, because lots of people do. And I'm like, no, because that's just fucking painful. Like, there are bras out there, and there are people I know who will wear 2 bras just to make sure their boobs don't bounce offensively to people running around. Now, listen, here's the thing, is that if I do that, I can't breathe properly and it hurts. And I find not being able to breathe properly quite an impediment to running, which I love. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm wearing this wonderful Elomi sports bra. This is not an ad. This is just what I pay my hard-earned money on. They're really good for larger boobs, if you're listening and wondering where I get them from. And I wear it, and I don't really care that my boobs bop up and down. It doesn't bother me. My back's fine. And yeah, and anyway, when I move my body, my boobs are part of my body and they will move with it. You know, I just wanted to make that clear on behalf of all other larger ladies out there who are like, who find themselves at any point having their bodies explained to them by other people. It's a wild experience. But it also got me thinking on a more kind of wide point about unsolicited advice. You know, people who give you answers to questions you haven't asked, you know. And someone said to me, well, unsolicited advice is really just criticism dressed up in polite clothes. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that it's, in a way, it's a way of dimming someone else's light. It's like, you've done this good thing. However, can I just give you this bit of advice to slightly bring you down? And that always says more about the person handing out the unsolicited advice than it does about you. And I just wanted to leave that there with you if you have been, because it, you know, I find myself in all sorts of areas of life being given unsolicited advice. And I feel like, oh, why has that bothered me? They're trying to be kind. And actually, yes, maybe they are, but they're also trying to sort of establish their superiority, I think often. I always remember I went on this, I was very lucky a few years ago to go on this like exercise retreat thing. It was just a really fun week of moving your body and eating delicious food in the sun. And there was this woman on this retreat, and she spent the whole time criticizing my squats. Your squat, that's not how you need to do this. Your squat needs to be deeper. I wanted to drop kick her out of the way. This is, and I'm not advocating violence, obviously. This was just, and I remember saying to this other woman, oh my God, Lady Muck over there is driving me up the fucking wall. And she said to me, Bryony, see it as doing service. And I said, what? And she said, listen, people like that are always going to want to have someone to patronize. And you just happen to be the person this week who she is able to patronize. You're doing her a favor in a way, because without you, she'd have to pick on someone else. Just see it as being of service. And I thought that is just such a wonderful way to transform those experiences that we have with people, you know, because I think we all encounter them every day. I just wanted to leave that with you and hope that maybe it helps you if you encounter an arsehole today.
Wow.
What's up?
I just bought and financed a car through Carvana in minutes.
You? The person who agonized 4 weeks over whether to paint your walls eggshell or off-white bought and financed a car in minutes?
They made it easy. Transparent terms, customizable down and monthly. Didn't even have to do any paperwork.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you checked out that spreadsheet I sent you for our dinner options?
Finance your car with Carvana and experience total control. Financing subject to credit approval.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
You'll know my guest today, actor Kimberley Nixon, from her roles in films such as Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging, which was a naughty's favourite of mine, and Wild Child, also a naughty's favourite of mine. She also starred in the Channel 4 comedy drama Fresh Meat as Josie and appeared in the BBC period drama Cranford. Now, Kimberley has been incredibly open about her journey with postnatal OCD, which she first revealed in 2022. We had such a great chat. Her honesty and vulnerability in sharing her experience with intrusive thoughts and the challenges of motherhood is really inspiring. But I also just wanted to acknowledge how brave Kimberley has been to do this and how difficult I know it has been. There's been a lot of anxiety in the run up to this episode coming out, because obviously we're talking about really exposing things. So I just wanted to kind of thank Kimberley for that, because she has done her own kind of OCD therapy work in the last couple of weeks as she's waited for this podcast to come out. And I think, and she's seen it as something she needs to do and she wants to do because she wants to help other people. And so I just wanted to say a massive thanks to her for that. A gentle warning, there are references to suicidal ideation in today's episode. Although myself and Kimberley have lived experience of OCD, we are not experts. As always, there are some great links in the show notes to help you if you're struggling. For now, I hope you enjoy my chat with Kimberley Nixon. Can I call you Kim?
You can call me Kim.
Okay, cool. Okay.
No.
No. That's too far.
No, KK. Yeah, no.
No. You have really kindly agreed to come in here to talk to me about postnatal obsessive-compulsive disorder, which you sort of revealed on social media in 2022.
Yes, I did reveal it.
I wanted to talk about OCD. So I wanted to kind of get into it because if I had £1 for every time someone said to me, oh, I've got a bit of OCD, you should see my sock drawer, we wouldn't be sitting here. We would be off in the Bahamas.
Yes.
I don't know how this is for you, but for me, I've had obsessive compulsive disorder since I was 11, and I don't have a sock drawer. I have a floordrobe. My husband calls it a floordrobe.
Yes.
And he jokingly says, I wish you had the good type of OCD.
Yes.
But of course, there is no good type of OCD. It's a disorder. But we all know, it's OCD has become sort of code for someone who's very organised.
Yeah, pernickety and just so, and you like things, beautifully color-coded.
Yeah.
And in all arranged in order of height. And for some people, that is a subtype. But to the extreme, to the point where they can't leave the house.
It's not a positive.
It's not, it's not, if you can just go, that looks nice, great, and then get on with your day. Some people literally cannot get on with their lives because of it. But that's just one subset of OCD. And when I became poorly after I had my son, I didn't remotely link it to OCD, because everything I knew about OCD, I was the opposite of that. Like you said, floordrobe.
There are so many myths about obsessive compulsive disorder. I think it affects something like 1% of the population. And I definitely, like you, I had no idea that what I had was OCD. When it first manifested for me, it was this belief that I had AIDS back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Didn't have AIDS. What I had was obsessive compulsive disorder. I want to just talk quickly through what OCD is.
Okay.
Obsessive compulsive disorder features a pattern of unwanted thoughts and fears known as obsessions. These obsessions lead you to do repetitive behaviours, also called compulsions. And these obsessions and compulsions get in the way of daily activities and cause a lot of distress. So that's the sort of like how it's defined. But the way I've always described it to people, OCD is like your brain refusing to acknowledge what your eye can see, so that like your hands are clean or the oven is off or that the bump in the road you've just gone over is a speed bump and not a child.
You don't believe reality.
No. And you can see it and people can't understand. Well, you can see that the candle's off. You can see that those hair straighteners are unplugged.
Yeah, but what if?
Yeah. And then the type of OCD that I think you also experienced, and this is why nobody talks about this kind of OCD, because you can't just like bring this up at a dinner party. Okay, but so it's about thoughts. So it's a subset known as pure O, although there isn't actually officially a title.
No, it's not. I don't think it's a clinical term. It sort of became known as that when certain professionals, OCD specialists, realize that your compulsions don't have to be physical. They're not visible. They're not visible and physical. And so that was a big game changer for a lot of people, because if your compulsions for your OCD are mental, you weren't always diagnosed with OCD. No. So that's kind of changed.
We all have thousands of thoughts every day. We are not our thoughts. And we all have intrusive thoughts. Everyone has intrusive thoughts. When I go and give like speeches about OCD to rooms, I say this and I wait for them all to back out of the room. So I say like, we've all been to a party and someone has handed us their baby. And then you think, what if I just threw the baby on the floor?
Yeah. Or I always use the, you're driving down the motorway and you're kind of in that, that semi kind of trance where you're just in a straight line on the M4 or something. The thought flickers through your brain of, what if I just swerved and caused a huge pileup? And that doesn't mean that you want to swerve and cause a huge pileup. It doesn't mean that you want to hurt any people. It's just a thought that flickers in and out. And what happens with people with OCD, so compare me to my husband, he gets exactly the same intrusive thoughts. Mad things pop into it. You're chopping some carrots and you're like, what if I just stabbed my hand? Whereas he just goes, that's weird, and lets it go. And he doesn't think that it says anything about him. Whereas
you become so distressed by the thought that you ruminate on it again and again and again.
I have to stop it and fix it and neutralize it. And why did I think that? And what does it mean about me and my values? And do I want to stab myself in the hand? Do I want to stab someone else in the hand? And then you get into an OCD sort of spiral. And for me, I've always said that the best way to describe it, because it is almost a physical feeling, even if you can't see it. When I'm having a real OCD episode, and especially when I was really poorly postnatally, it feels disgusting physically in a way. It feels like you're wearing someone else's skin. And you can't quite bear it.
It's like that sort of stomachy. It's hot. You want to crawl. You almost like you want to unzip your own skin.
Yes, I want to
crawl out.
Yes, you want to crawl out of it, and you can't rid yourself of the feeling. The other analogy is, you've got a big smelly coat. You don't know who it belongs to, and it's like 50 years old and it absolutely stinks, and someone found it in the bin, and you're wearing it and you can't take it off. All you want to do is take that coat off so that you can feel like you again. You can feel things in the real world and relate to the world that in a way that you were before. But now I can't remember a time that I wasn't wearing this coat. So that's
the coat's sort of contaminating.
It's all contaminated. And then what happens is you don't want to contaminate anybody else. So you withdraw. When I was becoming unwell, I had my son in October 2020, slap bang in the middle of the pandemic. Had a terrible birth. Then I had to stay in hospital for the best part of a week. My husband couldn't come in and see me.
Wow.
We were kind of locked in rooms, basically, unless you knock the door for a wee. And I became really unwell, and I didn't have anyone who knew me. I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, and I'm not saying that things would have been hugely different. But I think if my husband had come in the next day for normal visiting hours, he would have gone, there's something wrong here. He was an IVF baby, so he was really, really wanted. We tried for 5 years, and we finally did IVF, and we did it in February 2020. And it worked, and I got pregnant, and it was the first time I'd ever been pregnant, and then it progressed, and apart from horrible morning sickness, I just felt great.
So the pregnancy was like...
your normal pregnancy stuff, you get uncomfortable and you get whatever, but I just couldn't wait to meet this person that I knew was not missing from our lives, because we'd made we'd had talked about, what if IVF never works? What if we never have any children? Or we were like, we're good with each other. That's cool. That's going to be okay. That's going to be a different life, but it's going to be a great life. But then when I was pregnant, it was like, he's here, this mix of the two of us, and we couldn't wait to meet him. And the day before he was born, I went on like a 5-mile walk with the dog, and I was just like, I felt like I could lift a car up. I felt so mentally, physically, spiritually strong. I felt really strong. And then the next day when he was born, literally they lifted him up and I saw him and I had a moment of, oh my God, that's my baby. My baby. It's not someone else's baby. That I'm always holding other people's babies, but that's my baby, and he's here and he's in the world and he's making a noise and he looks gross and
And the birth was the birth
it was a C-section, but I
a planned C-section or
sort of, yes. Yeah. I began bleeding out basically, and then I needed 2 blood transfusions. So as I was holding the baby, I sort of said, take the baby, and I passed out. And then I was on blood transfusions, and then the baby was taken to. He was having breathing difficulties and things. So we were separated, and they said to my husband, pick who you're going with, and you can't go in between them and you can't go back to the other.
Because of COVID?
Yeah, because of COVID. So I said, go with the baby and just text me. And so I was alone. So I started bleeding out. Then I just remember this plummet, this crash, inside, almost like, when a computer crashes and no one knows why, that's what it felt like. Literally inside me, something crashed. Then we had the medical emergency, and then the next thing I'm in a little room by myself, hooked up to a blood transfusion, and my husband and my baby are gone, and I have no idea what's happening. But I just absolutely convinced myself, I kept seeing it in my head, that someone was going to kind of, oh, we're really, really sorry, but he didn't make it. And I was absolutely convinced of that. So I just kept staring at the door, hooked up to the blood transfusion, waiting for someone to kind of...
Waiting to be told that.
To pop their head around, obviously everything was absolutely fine, and we did have to stay in for a few days, but he's a really beautiful, gorgeous, healthy, perfect 3.5-year-old now, so he's all good. But from that point, I spiraled down and down and down, and when we went home, and then Wales was put into what they were calling, I think, a fire break, or one of those COVID lockdowns, and we couldn't see anybody, and I had never had a baby before, so I thought, I knew about baby blues, but I was like, is this baby blues? Because this is dark.
So in what way did it feel dark?
I was just convinced that I was going to do something wrong, that I couldn't do this, that now we were home and it was just us and the responsibility of that. And you'd think all of this would have occurred to me in the years of us trying to have a baby, but suddenly he was here and I was just terrified. I was absolutely terrified. So when people are like, did you have postnatal depression? And as if you were very sort of sad. I wasn't sad. I was terrified. I was physically vigilant. I was convinced that if I closed my eyes, even just to get 5 seconds of sort of actual shut eye, then if I opened my eyes again, he was going to be blue in his cot. So, I won't sleep then. My baby's in the next to me crib thing, level with the bed. And I should be sleeping. I'm exhausted. We were a few weeks in now. And I'm bolt upright. I'm stiff as a board. I'm tense. I'm shaking. And I'm just staring at the baby to make sure that his chest is rising and falling. And so that carried on for a few weeks. And then when we realised that maybe this isn't baby blues, because maybe it should have lifted, my world just became very dark. I can't really explain. It was like the lights went out. It was like there was no hope or joy, or I couldn't really take in all the lovely things that I can take in now. So all the cute baby stuff, the first smile and stuff, I didn't enjoy any of it because I was so terrified that it would all get taken away.
Because it's really interesting, you saying, because you think it's all going to get taken away.
Yeah.
That really resonates with me as having suffered OCD. It's that fear that you can't ever quite relax because something terrible is going to happen.
At any moment.
And I remember when I had my daughter, there was that same obsession with watching her breathe. But then I had this fear, because I would sit by her cot, and I had this fear that what if I'd strangled her? And then also the fear about, and this is the thing that people don't talk about, and I understand why people don't talk about, but what we really need to talk about, because it happens, was the horrible intrusive thoughts that I might have done something terrible to her while changing her nappy.
This is when it started to kick in. That's when that stuff started happening.
And then the fear that like the authorities are going to take her away from me.
So at first it was just like incredibly dark. What's going on? There's no joy. I can't connect to anything. This isn't me. I know, but I can't really vocalize it in any way. I'm so tired. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. And when I kept trying to neutralize everything, like anything that could happen to him, like I would see it so vividly in my mind. You know, I'd be changing him and he'd roll off onto the kitchen tiles and splat. You know, I could hear almost his skull cracking, and I could see it. It was just, so I kept seeing like a horrible future 5 seconds into the future all the time, and it was always terrible. So I did all these things, you know, put pillows on the floor, and if he ever cried, I gave myself this weird rule that I had 10 seconds to get to him, and if I didn't get to him within 10 seconds, I think I'd read somewhere that, you know, they'll start having like abandonment issues and they'll, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Parenting handbooks.
So,
very helpful.
It was a nightmare. And when I'd done everything that I possibly could to protect him from external things, this little voice started of, what if you're the danger? Mm-hmm. What if you're something that you didn't even know you were? What if you keep seeing horrible things because you want those horrible things? I mean, that is the go-to phrase with OCD. What if?
Yeah. That's the dirty code.
Yeah.
That's the really dirty code.
Yeah.
Like the horrible, like I just listening to you, I feel like it's so difficult to explain, because I'm sure there are people listening right now who it'll be like the relief of hearing other people talk about it.
Yeah.
But like for me, my whole life was that I had that fear. So like this is why people don't talk about this type of OCD, because I think my brain tells me I might be a serial killing paedophile.
Yes.
Doesn't quite have the same ring to it as you should see my sock drawer, you know, and you know, but this is so dark, this type of OCD, and so common.
I was so sorry, I don't want to get upset. Like, I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed of myself that these ideas, these thoughts, these concepts, that they would even occur to me, that I just went down this rabbit hole of what does this mean? Oh my God, maybe the birth has awoken something that I didn't even know myself, and I can't tell anybody because they're going to take the baby away. And, you know, I think my one saving grace is that I was incredibly honest with my husband. And I know I get a lot of messages from people who maybe don't have that kind of relationship with their partner and they truly are alone. And I can't imagine it, because even though he's going, it's fine, Kim, it's not, you know, you're just a new mum and you're risk assessing and you're hormonal and you're tired and you're worried something's going to happen. That's perfectly normal. And I was like, no, but people don't worry about this stuff happening. But I think it was the unrelenting constancy of it. It did not stop. I was living in like two worlds. So there was the real world that was going on. And I learned after about a year, to be able to sort of have a conversation with someone while that was just going on. Like I learned to be able to function with it. Yeah. But, you know, it was just non-stop. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't shower. I couldn't do anything. And I was absolutely terrified to go near the baby because I was just too scared. What was screaming in my head was, give the baby to your husband and leave the room, leave the house, leave the country, because that way you know the baby is safe from you. But then on the other hand, you desperately love your baby.
Just the cognitive dissonance of it, isn't it?
And you want to, like, we in Wales, obviously, we'd say cut, but you want to cut your baby and snuggle and do all those things. And it was like, I remember my husband once said, it's like your hard drive has been corrupted, because it was like, I wanted to snuggle with my baby and give him little kisses and do, you know, and tickle his belly and all those sorts of things. But this voice of, why do you want to do those things? What's the motive behind it?
Yeah.
Do you know, does he need changing, or are you changing him on purpose? You know, and it was just...
Yeah. Oh God, it's so
changing and bathing just became horrendous. But at first it was putting him in his little baby bath. And these are the things that I thought, you know, one day when I have a little baby, I'm going to get to do the bath times with the toys and the bubbles and then story time.
And a beautiful soft towel.
Yeah, it's going to be a big fluffy towel, and it's going to be just gorgeous and beautiful and Instagrammy, and it's going to be, you know. And instead it was me terrified that he would slip under the water and I would just not do anything. I would just watch because what if that happened?
What if I do something and then I've sort of blanked it out in horror?
Yeah.
Like almost like my brain's gone into a shock. So I
Constant.
need to check.
I was memory reviewing the last few minutes all day long. So I would be simultaneously seeing a horrible future, but constantly checking the very, very recent 2 minute ago past to make sure, okay, he's all changed and back in his onesie and everything, and that's great. What did I do? Did anything happen that could have been, was anything a mistake? Did I accidentally do this or touch that or what? Oh God, and it was just constant. Very much at this point, I had no idea this was OCD.
Yeah.
I thought I'd gone mad. I thought I'd literally lost my mind because the last day of being pregnant, I was so great and happy and looking forward to it. And now I'm this shell.
So it was a switch.
Of a thing. It was a switch. And something has happened and it almost felt magical. Like, have I been cursed? Like, I don't even really, I don't believe in that stuff. But it was like, it was so instant and so like a 180.
What is... Dax, are you?
Tracking all our cars on Carvana Value Tracker on all our devices? Yes, Kristen, yes I am.
Well, I've been looking for my phone for...
In Dax's domain, we see all. So we always know what our cars are worth.
All of them?
All of them. Value surge, trucks up 3.9%.
That's a great offer.
I know. Sell?
Sell.
Track your car's value with Carvana Value Tracker today.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
When I first experienced OCD as I know it, I was only 11, but I remember going to bed one night and I'd gone to the Smash Hits Polliners party. And I was like so happy because I'd seen Take That or something.
Yeah.
Robbie Williams. And I remember I went to bed and I had this dream about a woman having an incurable disease. And I woke up and I was absolutely convinced that I was dying of AIDS.
Yes.
And at the time, it was this very shameful campaign of don't die of ignorance around HIV and AIDS.
Right.
And it was, looking back, a very stigmatizing campaign especially for gay people. But I was an 11-year-old girl who had I'd never even kissed a boy or there was no rational reason.
No.
But I had, for years, I had no idea that what that was actually obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Did it all just fall into place?
It did, but I remember reading, it was only when I was as it sort of came on and then just as quickly as it had come on. So I had about 3 months where I would wash my hands obsessively until they bled. And I would hide my toothbrush under my pillow because I was worried that I was going to infect my family. Mm-hmm. It got to the point where I couldn't leave the house because I was worried if I didn't have it, maybe I was going to get it, just from the invisible air. But just as quickly as it came on, it sort of went away. I was about 11, 12, and then it came back again when I was doing my A-levels. And this time it was intrusive thoughts. What if I had a much younger brother? What if I'd hurt my brother? What if I had done something to a child on the way home from school and blanked it out in horror?
Totally forgotten about it.
Yeah. It was only because there was a movie out at the time called As Good As It Gets.
Yeah.
And Jack Nicholson very much plays OCD for laughs.
Yes.
And he won an Oscar for it.
You see, you've just said that, and that's the first time I've linked, that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
The OCD represented in that film.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah. No, because I remember
there's nothing to do with me.
Danced up the stairs at the Oscars. I think he won an Oscar for it.
Right.
And he skipped the cracks, and it was a joke. And I remember there was a piece in a newspaper about OCD, and I think my mum sort of showed it to me because she'd obviously noticed some things.
Yes.
And, we play it for laughs, but actually OCD is this very serious condition and these are the different subtypes of it. And I remember reading it and it was like, that's me.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the thing you have with OCD is it goes, but what if it isn't? What if you're actually a master criminal?
Yeah,
and you're using OCD as an excuse?
No other condition or illness in the world is so meta that
it's so meta.
It's so meta that it's like, do you really have a kidney infection?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Or are you making yourself have a kidney infection, or do you want to have a kidney infection, or maybe you haven't got kidneys at all, or
Yeah, I would imagine like the criminal like barristers prosecuting me saying, you have made this up.
Oh, I constantly do that. I'm constantly remembering things in case they come up in court.
So what was the moment? It was a long time that you were going through.
It was a really long time, and I got help straight away. I really did get help straight away. I was very kind of, mental health savvy in that I knew myself. I knew myself really, really well, and I asked for help straight away, and it wasn't getting anywhere. It was making me worse because I felt like a freak. I felt like I knew in the back of my head, I was thinking, right, I know what's going on is really scary, and I know all this is going on, but you have to be honest with like medical professionals because that is the only way you're going to get better, which is true. But the more honest I was, the more I felt like a freak. I felt like this outlier. I was talking to perinatal mental health people. There's quite a niche group of possible patients, and I was just getting this look all the time, this sort of...
They had no idea what you were talking about.
No idea what I was talking about at all.
Which is definitely going to feed the OCD even more.
That terrified me. It absolutely terrified me because I was just looking for... there's a thing in OCD about reassurance. I'm really good at not asking for it now, but I realised my whole life that I've constantly sought reassurance about things all the time. I need to check things all the time. That's okay, isn't it? What did they mean by that?
This is a really important thing for anyone listening. We have to get into this in the bonus episode, but the seeking reassurance is instinctively what you want to do for the relief. No, I haven't done that. No, I haven't said that. No, this hasn't happened.
Asking people around you.
But it actually makes it worse. It makes the OCD more entrenched.
Yes, because there's this idea that I always think there's a kind of glitch in the brain that it's sending false messages that there's a danger, that there is something to worry about. And if you're seeking reassurance or you're trying to fix that, me recovering from OCD has been about just letting the emergency flares go off in my brain and not react to them.
And not getting sucked down.
Not getting sucked into.
What was so interesting listening to you talk about that experience in early motherhood where it started with what if someone else hurts him? What if? And as you see that when you start feeding it and giving it reassurance.
Oh, you just paint yourself into a corner.
And it'll get darker and darker. OCD will attach itself. This is the other thing that's really important to make clear.
Yes.
It attaches itself to things that you hold dear and you hold close.
Yes.
So about 2 years ago, I got COVID and I took some night nurse, and then I saw on the bottle that it had a small amount of alcohol in it. And then I took it again the next night. Anyway, I became convinced that I'd relapsed on night nurse. And it got to the stage where I couldn't pour myself a glass of water because I was worried there might be like some gin in it or something. So I had to get my husband to do it for me.
Yes.
Seeking reassurance.
Oh, but that's doing compulsions by proxy.
Compulsions by proxy. Thank you. But then within about 2 weeks, I was back to ruminating over when I was drinking and my child was 3 years old. What if in that thing I did something terrible?
Yes.
You go from naught to Fred West in 60 seconds.
That's such a good way.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it.
And I wouldn't have been able to say, this is the other thing that is really important to talk about, is that I would never be able to make jokes about these things. I wouldn't have been able to say words like paedophile or Fred West. And there might be people listening who are wincing and having to go off into compulsions to try and neutralise what they've just heard.
I still find it very difficult. One of my ERP exposure response prevention, which we'll come to, is the kind of the
gold
standard treatment for OCD. It seems counterproductive, but I for a very long time thought it didn't work, but it really does work. But would just be standing in a room by myself, saying it out loud,
saying the word paedophile,
saying the word murder, stabbing, rape.
Yeah. Well, how are you feeling right now saying that?
Like really, really stressed.
Just take a deep breath.
But
I kind of wanted...
I could never have done this
if you hadn't have had the ERP.
Yeah, because the thought is, oh my God, where is that coming from? What does that mean? It's the worst thing you can be. It's the worst thing you could do. And it's focused on the the thing that you love the most, and it is the cruelest condition because of that, because it literally
attaches itself to the most important.
Yeah, it over the space of like 2 years, it broke my heart because I loved him so deeply, but I couldn't. I was so scared to love him deeply, and that's what it does. And the more the OCD realizes that you love something, that you want to protect something, the more it latches on to it.
So I want to get on to talking about ERP and CBT, because there will be people listening who a lot of light bulbs might be going off. But I also just want to talk a bit about that understanding, because one of the things that has helped me most is to realize that this is like many mental illnesses. This is your brain trying to protect you, but it's kind of gone a bit haywire.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to understand that it always attacks things that you hold dear. So that's why it picked up on my sobriety. It's why it picked up on my child. It's why when I was 11, it picked up on AIDS, which was the big panic of the day.
And on you infecting your family, which is the thing you love the most.
Yeah. I remember when I was pregnant, and this is when women get in touch with me about quite a lot. I became convinced that the child wasn't my husband's.
Right.
And I became almost like, I think sometimes people with OCD would make very good like forensic detectives, because I was going through the nights where we possibly could have conceived our daughter and checking who was I out with on those nights. And I was asking male friends if we had had sex and I'd forgotten it. Can you, that is nuts.
No, but I'll tell you what's more nuts than that. I've got top trumps on that.
Okay, go on.
We did IVF.
Yeah.
And I became convinced that there'd been a mix-up.
Of course.
And that because I'd always heard or seen that whenever people had babies, the baby tended to look like the dad before it looks like the mum.
Yeah.
As a sort of, there's that idea of the kind of primal, so that the dad sticks around and knows, sort of caveman, he knows that that's his offspring kind of thing. And my son looked so much like me and not at all like my husband. And I was like, that's really unusual. That's really unusual. I've read up that that's unusual, so that means something. Obviously, we did IVF, so I was like, I definitely didn't cheat on you. I definitely didn't cheat on you. And even if I did, no, I didn't. It's fine. So there must have been a mix-up in the lab. So I was Googling, and I literally came downstairs one day and I said, there's a deal on. It's £99 for a paternity test. So we can get it, do a paternity test, and then send it off. And my husband went, are you being serious? And I was like, well, no. I said, look, I know you're going to love him anyway, so there's no problem there. So, I mean, we could probably just sue the clinic, to be honest. So
actually,
it wasn't like, oh, I think you're going to leave, or I think you're not going to. It was like, oh, no, I know you're going to be a great dad to him, even though he's not yours. But we should just know, we should find out for definite, because that would be because you're constantly seeking reassurance. And facts and chasing it and chasing it and chasing it. And he was like, we did IVF. I was like, yeah, but
What if?
Let's
talk about ERP and CBT.
Yes.
And so if you are listening to this and you think that you may have obsessive-compulsive disorder, obviously you want to get yourself to a doctor, but it's what kind of people are often worried about what therapy to get or who they need to speak to. CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioural therapy, is broadly speaking what you will be offered if you present with OCD,
which is what I was offered.
But there's a very specific type of CBT. There's a lot of acronyms going on here.
No, I know.
There's a very specific type of CBT, which is exposure response prevention, which is ERP.
Yes.
Which is, as you said earlier, it's where you will be exposed to the very thing that you fear most.
Yes.
And the idea being that the more you're exposed to it without giving in to the compulsions, the more able you will be able to deal with it, and the less it will bother you as time goes on.
It's not this, but it's you've got a fear of spiders, and you hold a spider, and you hold that spider until you can get your body to not react. And I mean, it's not that. You don't go to ERP thinking they're just going to put a spider in your hand. Like, it's not that.
And then you will be
especially when
cured
it's
of
more
OCD.
mental. Yeah, you're cured. It's a constantly evolving thing. You know, for a really long time, you want to just give me a tablet and I'll take the tablet and I'll go back to who I was before. Even though who I was before had OCD, but to me it was like, no, there was a before and there was an after, and it was very black and white thinking is a whole other.
Yes,
is a whole other thing with OCD. It's when things are either this or that. You know,
there's nothing in between.
So my thing now is especially with ERP is trying to live in the grey and be comfortable with it. You know,
with uncertainty.
Because when people have OCD, they crave certainty. Please tell me I'm not a murderer. Please tell me I'm not a paedophile.
Yeah, but it's really hard when I remember a therapist saying to me, you have to live with the thought that maybe you are.
Yes.
And I was like, what? No, I can't do that.
I can't. I can't. I literally can't. And you know, after a certain amount of time, I actually can't live with this. So I don't think I will be able to much longer. And that's how bad it got, where I just completely planned it out, because it was like, oh my God, for the first time a kind of way out appeared to me. And it obviously wasn't a way out. In my mind, it was like if you're talking about killing yourself, or if you're talking about like suicidal thoughts and things like that. I mean, I don't think you can be like inundated with intrusive thoughts that you ruminate on of that kind of taboo caliber, like taboo nature, and of that intensity without going into suicidal ideation, because and I can't tell you how much I wasn't a candidate for that. You know, I was in a strong relationship. We were so wanting a baby. We had the baby. He was great. He was perfect. Everything should have been great. And suddenly I found myself but in a really logical, methodical way, going, okay, well, I'll do it on a Sunday because that's nice. It's the end of the week. And then it's the first on Monday. So my husband and my son can start the month off fresh. That would be great. It just absolutely sort of manic thinking, but it just kind of made sense to me at the time. And obviously, you know, I didn't, and I'm very glad that I didn't, and I got better and I was able to look back on it. I realised that it was OCD, or the idea came up when I was too scared to Google my symptoms, because I thought if I Google my symptoms, some alarm in a government building is going to go off,
and the police are going to come,
and the police are going to come here. And at one point, I was like, I'm going to go to the police. I'm going to go to the police, and I'm going to tell. And my husband, what are you going to say to them? I'll say that I'm having horrible thoughts. Right. He's like,
what do you expect them to do?
Yeah, what are they going to do? You know, I might be a danger. It was kind of like a sort of, pre-crime. What's it, a Minority Report? You know, he was like, it's not my...
like a preemptive...
Like, what are you going to say? I was like, I'm having these thoughts, and they're going to be right, do you want to do any of that stuff that you're thinking about? Well, no, I did. I was like, I want to just, in my pajamas, walk into a police station and go, yeah, let's just stop this pretense.
Yeah. I definitely had those feelings. I wrote about, that was the first time I wrote about it when my daughter was about 1, and I was like, if I just write about this now in my column, either people will come back to me, because I've never heard anyone talk to me about OCD in that form, and they'll be like, no, I have that too. And I'll be like, right, I'm not mad, or I am mad, but I'm not bad, right?
Yes.
Or the police will just come and take me away and then it's done.
Yes. I mean, I have that now with this, in that although I'm much better and I know, and it's fine, but part of me is like, people are going to listen to this and they're going to think a certain way about you, or they're going to think, maybe they will think that you're a bad person, or maybe they, but I have to...
But in a way, isn't that a form of exposure?
Yes, that is a form of exposure, because, ideally, I'd like for us to delete this and for it to never have happened. But it did happen, and it is happening.
I wanted to kind of finish this main episode really by asking you, by thanking you for being so honest, because it really does help people, and it's helped me. The more that we can see other people who kind of look like us voicing these crazy thoughts, it's like I look at you and I'm like, well, she's obviously not a paedophile. and then
Thank you.
And then it's like the penny drops. It's like, oh, like people...
It really does. Bad parents don't worry about being bad parents. You're doing it because you're risk assessing. You're making sure everything's okay. And for some people like us with OCD, that's going to turn into something. For people like my husband, it's a crappy few weeks and then you move on, for people without that kind of rumination, that OCD brain. But it's so common to have intrusive thoughts in early parenthood for men and women, for mums and dads. And I'm angry that we're not told that, and that we're made to feel alone and shameful and like bad people. We're not bad people.
On that note, thank you so much, Kimberley Nixon.
Put it all out there.
A massive thank you to Kimberley for such a candid and heartfelt conversation today. I think what Kimberley's journey shows is similar to mine, is that the moment that you share this experience with others and you find your tribe, you're on the route to recovery. It doesn't cure you, but oh my God, shame dies when you expose it to the light. Now, I don't like to leave you without a recommendation. And this week I thought I'd offer you one. If you are listening and you are experiencing mental illness in any way, or intrusive thoughts and just a crowded brain, I wanted to recommend to you this amazing app that I use quite religiously. It's called Insight Timer. Now, it's free. It's a meditation app. And if the idea of meditating fills you with fear, as it always has me, I find personally that meditating when I'm in a crisis, a mental health crisis, it's like asking someone in a lead suit to go for a swim. It is not helpful. And I've had a kind of long and complex relationship with meditation, but the one thing that has helped me more than anything else is this app called Insight Timer, because they are meditations and they give you time in them, but they're more like talks from people that know what they're talking about, who know a lot about intrusive thoughts and managing them. And there's just such a wealth of stuff on there, and I love it. And if you haven't jotted that down, all the information is in the show notes. I'm back on Friday with a bonus edition of Life of Bryony, where Kimberley and I will be answering some of your OCD-related questions. See you Friday.